I want to thank Dr. Lee and University of Hong Kong for having me here. I'm delighted to be able to have this experience with you. And I especially appreciate your coming at this time of the day after a long day, hearing a lot of interesting ideas, a lot of talk, and sticking it out with me for this last workshop. I just want you to appreciate the fact that I am also sticking this out. It is 16 hours later here than in San Francisco, where I come from, so that by the time we're finished, it will be about midnight as far as my body is concerned. So we're going to have to try to keep this lively so that we can all stay engaged and stay awake, especially me. And part of the way you can really help me do that is by making comments and questions and really trying to engage with me in this. I know it's a big group. I actually thought it would be a little seminar. It's a large group, but please, I like being interrupted. I'm necessarily going to talk about things I know about, many of which come from the United States. I would love to hear about examples from Hong Kong and Singapore and other countries. And I also want to give you the opportunity, if you would prefer, I've got the Ning open with this session, which is the session, What Should We Assess with Technology? So if you want to send comments or questions by the Ning, I'll look back here every now and then and try to see what's there as well and try to address your concerns in the session if I can, otherwise afterwards. Okay, so let's talk about assessment. I am really tickled to be able to show this. Next slide. In all the years I've been interested in assessment, I have never had the president of my country say anything about it that I agreed with before. But last March, President Barack Obama, talking to the governors of the states in the United States, and in the United States, education is largely controlled by the states, the individual 50 states. And he said, we're not measuring the right things. The things that are going to make a difference for the lives of our students are not what you do on a fill-in-the-bubble test. And he called on the governors to think about changing their assessment systems so that they're actually measuring 21st century skills and the things our students need for the future. I think that's awe-inspiring. Of course, now what we have to do is deliver on that promise. And I think we're very unlikely to be able to deliver on that promise unless we use technology. So why is technology important? We now have the possibility of starting to measure things that we couldn't measure with paper and pencil technology, that simply we did not know how to get at the complexity of thinking or the integration of different skills into a complex performance. We are not able on a paper and pencil multiple choice exam to come very close at all to simulating the nature of people's activity in the real world, the future lives that our students will have. But we can actually approach that with technology. And so it makes it possible for us to have new kinds of measures, and that's what I think is exciting. I'm going to spend some time talking about some examples I know of. You may know of some others, where we see the use of simulations, visualizations, data sets in new kinds of assessment, and the possibilities that are opened up. And I think this is equally important when we're actually doing instruction to a large extent online, or a significant extent with digital resources, learning resources, as you just heard discussed. And that makes it possible to embed and integrate the assessment with the instruction, which is a really key idea. So that part I think is all positive. But we're going to talk a little bit about some concerns. But before I do that, I would like to spend a little time talking about terminology, some terms, definitions, if you will. Many of the terms used in talking about assessment, even people who have the same mother tongue from the same country, sometimes mean different things when they use the same word. So especially in a conference like this with people from different countries, I thought it was important to try to define my terms for you. And if this isn't clear, if it doesn't make sense, please speak up and ask me. And we'll try to put them in terms that make sense for everyone. So let's start simply. What's the difference between assessment and test? Why are we talking about assessment? And do you really mean a test? Well, let's think about that a little bit. In some ways, I think there's just a dislike of the term test. When you see the term test, what do most of us think of? We think of something like this cartoon. So it's separated from the learning. You know, we did learning then. Today we're going to do a test. The student does it by him or herself, so you see there's no one else around. It's just you and that piece of paper that you have to fill out, that examination or that test. And the other thing is, all of the resources that you would normally use in order to support your intelligent action, which include other people, but also information resources, other tools, all of them are put away except for the number 2 pencil with the eraser. That's all you get when you take the test. Think about how different that is from life, from the world that we really care about, that we're educating our students for. And now think about it in the 21st century, when most of our students have in their backpack a smartphone that has greater computing power than the supercomputers of the 1980s. And what do? We tell them, put that away. And in fact, if the student got the smartphone out of the backpack and started Googling the questions on the test, we would say that's cheating. We would throw the student out of school. But think about it for a minute. What kind of a system have we set up where using information resources is not considered intelligent behavior, it's considered cheating? And do we have the right kinds of tests if you can get an A on the test by using Google? Should we be giving people tests that Google can get 100% on? So it makes us stop and think about testing. And many of us prefer the term assessment largely because it's a little broader. So when I use the term assessment, I'm talking about trying to get at students' thinking, their knowledge, their competence. But I'm not necessarily saying they're doing it by themselves. It could be an assessment of a group. I'm not necessarily saying they can't use information resources. So it's a little bit broader. And I'm not necessarily saying it's separate from instruction, because it may be part of instruction. And it also may be very informal. So when a teacher looks at the faces of the students to see, are they looking attentive? Are they looking confused? What's the body language telling me? That is, in fact, a form of assessment. So I use the term assessment to be much broader and more encompassing than the word test. It includes tests, formal tests, but also assessment can occur within the context of instruction, and it can occur informally as well as formally. So is that similar to the way you would use it in Hong Kong? Does that seem reasonable? Okay. Is that all right? All right. So let's look at a few more terms. And the reason I show this is an assessment, in fact, could be in the context of how a student interacts